Hello students, welcome to week one, CIT166. Okay, I thought I disconnected stuff. So each week I will give you a lecture, and it'll be kind of a overview of what we're going to learn this week and kind of go through some stuff. So you'll have a lecture and there'll also be labs, and the labs will consist of what we're going to do for the week. It'll be the exercise. We'll go through an exercise, and I'll show you how to do stuff, and then I'll show you enough stuff where you can enhance something or maybe add something different and so forth. And it'll be kind of like the project once we get to that point. But I'll make this as exciting and as learning as possible since it is online and not in person. So welcome to week one, getting started in iOS. So I'll go through some stuff here, and once again, if you have questions, discussion, or my email is the best way of getting in touch with me. All right, so objectives. Learn about the iOS platform. Learn about Git, source code repository. So we're using GitLab in this course. Prepare to register with Apple as the developer. So go through the video that I provided, and that'll be helpful. Learn about Xcode in the iOS SDK. SDK is software development kit. Write a simple Objective-C script in Xcode. So we will have something that you will write. All right, so needed to develop an iOS apps, an Intel-based Mac running Mac OS Sierra or later. You could probably have a previous version instead of Sierra. You could still be running Mavericks or something even before that, and it still should be perfectly fine. If you are running Windows, I'll have a separate session on different options to make this work. A user ID as a registered Apple developer or as a member iOS developer program. So I walked through, and there's actually another video that I walked through and show you how to set that up. It's free to set it up, but in order to basically list your code out there, your app, it's $100 a year. The ability to program in Objective-C, which is the programming language used to create iOS applications to work. Now, that's kind of a false statement. It's one of the languages. So when Apple came out in 2007 with its platform, they used Objective-C. But within the past 3 or 4 years, they came up with their own language called Swift. Now this course is not on Swift, but Swift is their language and it's very similar to Objective-C. But they control that, so that's why they wanted to have their own powerful language. But you can still develop apps in Objective-C, but it's more often that you'll see Swift now. So iOS SDK software development kit. The mobile operating system, initially called the iPhone operating system, is developed to distribute by Apple. So Apple is called the App Store. Google is called the Play Store, which supports Android. This is used by developers around the world to create mobile applications or apps, which are then made available to users in the App Store. So the App Store itself is built on OS X High Sierra, which is Apple's most recent operating system. I'm not running that. It has a lot of bugs, so I personally wait a couple of years before I switch. I'm a little concerning about those things happening. I've had so many problems in the past with Microsoft that I'm just a little sensitive when it comes to switching. The iOS platform has a very powerful foundation. It's derived on the OS X operating system, originally developed for Mac. So the integrated development environment named Xcode is which you can write tests and develop Objective-C. The simulator, which allows you to test an app. So we'll walk through this week. We'll walk through another separate video of how to get that started to kind of show you an example. So if you don't have an iPhone or you don't have an iPad, not a big deal, because that's why they have these simulators to allow you to test in that platform. If you do have an iPhone, I will help you. I'll show you how to. It's actually really easy, but I'll show you how to get your iPhone hooked up. So these little apps that you develop in class, you can put them on your phone. So when I develop an app in iPhone or Android, both the same thing, I'll hook my phone up to the computer, and it links into it, and I'm able to use it as a debug mode. And we'll talk about that as well, where you can put your phone in debug mode. And what that does is it takes your application and puts it on your phone. So you could test it as often as you want to without having it on an app store. But in order for other people to have an app, get that app, it's more likely that they have to download on App Store unless they give you your phone and they register as a phone on the network. Cocoa Touch is a programming framework for Objective-C, therefore iOS. It's a third party that allows you to develop for games. I've used it for game development. It's very powerful. Apple has its own platform now for this, but I've used the Cocoa Touch and it's very impressive and powerful. So Objective-C, it's an object-oriented programming language. It's basically came from C language. So if you've ever had C before in school, it's basically derived from the same thing. So C+ object-oriented programming language. So it's anything like C, C++, and so forth. The concept of the headers. So if you see the @interface file holds the instance variable, properties, and method declarations. So at this point, if you see me talking about this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. When we get to that point, we'll discuss it then. The @implementation file holds the method implementations and all its properties. So it's housing information that's going to use later. That is declared in the interface file and also synthesized as the file. All right, where am I at here? Concept header. All right, options for registering your Apple. So register your Apple developer plan. So I've kind of gone through this a little bit. Just read through this. It tells you how to do it, and I have a video on it. The iOS developer plan permits developer test apps, devices, offers, etc. So is the iOS developer plan, it allows you to link your phone to it, but we'll get to that. No big deal. 3 different iOS developer programs. You have the developer program, which is $99 a year. There is another one that I don't have listed here. It's for an organization. It's also $99 a year, but I think it gives you additional features since it's for an organization. And then there's the enterprise program, costs $299 a year. So this enterprise program has a lot more options and features, and this would be more or less for a big company who's doing something. And then right here I have a link that'll take you and show you the different options. All right, so Xcode is actually just one part of a larger development application known as the iOS Software Development Kit, or iOS SDK. In addition, it includes the compiler, a debugger, an interface builder, and an iOS simulator. So what's nice about developing the app, you're not just writing code out. There are third parties that allows you to write it in a different language, but here you're actually able to design it how you want it to look, which makes it pretty impressive. It makes it easy for you to get it wrong. Xcode Workspace, Navigator area, where you can navigate through files in a project. Editor area where so let's kind of go through this. So Navigator area, and we'll show you. Let me actually pull it up on the screen here. 1 second. All right, so as you see here, I pulled it up in iOS, so I have it on 7+, no big deal. So we have the Navigator area where you can navigate through the files. So if you're on the Navigator area, that would be this location here. So we have our project, and we have our iOS app 1, and then we have like our files, like our header file, our main file, all these different things. We have our storyboard, our launch, our plist, which we'll get into that, our supporting files, any products that go along with it, which is this. We'll go back to main storyboard. So that right there is our navigator. Now, if we talk about our editor area, it's where you can actually type and edit Objective-C code. So that would have been in this area here. So if I would actually gone to this delegate here, so this is where I can actually come here and type code in. So I have this uppercase, so or not uppercase, but pretty big. And then the area over to my far right is the utility area. So this area right here, the utility area, is where you would use tools in this area to create interfaces. So we have a controller down here, we have navigation controls, we have a table view. I won't read them all, but you can see here's all these different objects. We have something for a button, something for a control, text box, switch on and off, and so forth. So you have all these different options down there. So these are things that you can, well, you can drag it there, but if, let's say that we were in the storyboard, and let's say button, for example, when we get into development, let me find button. Let's do date picker. Let's start up a button. Where we at? All right, so if we were like developing something, we could easily click a button on the screen, and we have all these different controls. So now this is our utility area where we make changes. We have our code going here. Now it picks up these different responses that we have to develop for. So we have all these options that we could kind of go through. So, so if we were creating our new project in Xcode, we'd actually, you don't see it though, but we would create a new project, and I'll actually walk you through a separate video on how to do that. So no big deal. We'll walk through that and learn that. Creating and running a project in Xcode. So actually, let's just pretend. Let's just do it right now. So if I clicked on and you can new, and we say we want to create a new project, you have all these different options here. So you have iOS, watch operating system, so you could develop something for your watch, the TV, so Apple TV, Mac OS, and then cross platforms. So cross platforms would be multiple platforms. I haven't really played around with this too often, but for this case, let's say that we did iOS. We have all these different options that we could choose from. Now it does have the Cocoa Touch library, and a framework, but we're not really going to play with that right now. So let's say that we wanted to do this one right here and hit next. You give it a name. Let's say we call it my first app. You have a team. Mine's Jeffrey Seaman. Organization, mine's CCAC. Organization identifier, I'll just make it CCAC my name. My language, so I only have two options for the phone, so I'll use C. And then what device? You have the option to do universal, iPhone, or iPad. So iPad is just specifically for iPad. Same thing for iPhone. Universal means it'll work on both platforms, but in this case, I'm just going to keep this right here. And you have these different things, but I'm not going to worry about this right now. I'm going to hit next. And then I need a location for it. So I'm going to create a new folder and call it my first iOS app and hit create. And then click create down here. Real quick, don't click on create get repository because we're doing that separately. Perfect. So now we have a lot of things that enable login accounts because I'm using a different account. Oops. It doesn't like that. So it wants me to sign in with my other accounts. I'm not worried about that right now. So, but this is kind of, it shows you how to create and run a new project. We don't really have anything going here. Actually, it's, let's see. It's not going to run because we are, let's see here. Because we are, yeah, you see how big it is? I have to fix this. But if you run the application, this is your simulator. We have to talk about how to fix this. This is not pretty at all. But if you want to run a platform, looks ugly. Too big. You would just click the play button up here, but we need to talk about how to, let's just stop that for now. Because that's iPhone Plus and want to talk about how to work through that. All right, so talking about running, let's see what else we have to talk about. So let's say let's close this project out real quick. All right, so let's say I was creating a new project. I want to show you something here. So when we actually learn a lot of stuff that we learn, if you want to create an application for the Mac, you would come up here. You can have a Cocoa application, you create a game. A lot of the things that we learn right off the bat, we're going to use a command line to see it work. That's important. Let's see what else. The other thing is when you choose, let's say we chose that product name, this would be the name of your app. So let's say it was called, let's say that you're developing a weather app. We'll say weather control. You want to have your organization. So if your organization is Weatherman, so that's your thing. Your organization identifier. So name would be like your school name. So in case this would be CCAC. And then your organization identifier would be maybe abbreviation of your school, which we have CCAC and dot your name. So I have my name and then the language that you're using. That's what you would do there. Not going to hit next because we already know what happens. All right, let's see here. The other thing I wanted to talk about was let's see here, targets. So let me pull the targets. 1 second. So this area over here, if you click on, let's say we're over here, you click on this, you have all these different options up here. Build settings, general will have your name. It'll display the name of the app. It'll have your status of who you're signed in with. I don't have this working right now. What devices will be used, main interface. Do you want it to be portrait? Do you want it to be landscape? So do you want them to be able to take the app and put your phone sideways or up and down? You'll talk about that. Capabilities. You have options that you can turn map on for the map kit. If you want to use background modes, keychain sharing, and so forth, and maybe a health kit. So if you develop some health kit app, but we're not going to really work with that. Resource tags, I'm not going to talk about that. Info is just basic information that's already on the phone, so you won't have to really make any changes here. Build settings tells you where your deployment's at, your linking, your packaging. We're not going to have to change any of this information. Build phases, it walks you through the phases. Once again, we're not going to do anything with this. We're not going to change stuff here specifically. And build rules. So if you have specific stuff that you want to build, but in our case, we don't really have to worry about that right now. All right, so I'm used to asking questions. So when we were in the navigation area on a site, let's go back here and click on the main area, main.m right here. So this guy right here is displays the code for the main method in the area. So Xcode automatically generates this code. So this is automatically generated. It's not like something that I had to write to produce it. It automatically gets generated. So it's something that has to happen. So let's see. So let's talk about, like, I have this on iPhone Plus. So let's do, so you see here where I don't have 8 in here. That means I don't have that SDK developed. So let's say I wanted to go with 7. New device is connected to Mac, which means I don't have my phone connected. Generic. So we'll see 7. Let's see if it makes it a little bit better. It's kind of big though. Still. It's taking some time to load. It loaded. So the buttons, this screen is super big for some reason. I don't know why. My screen's super large too. So it has that button I created. It doesn't do anything because we didn't do anything with it yet. So once I click run, it just runs it. It's running right now. So that thing's running. So this is a way to simulate it. But like I said, it's really big for some reason. I have to see why, because it shouldn't be that big, because we really can't do anything with it. So that's how you kind of get those things. You could choose different ones. If you have, you could add extra ones. You could do iPad, the whole 9 yards. So it kind of walks through that. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about in the lecture? So as far as iOS, this is just, this class is just kind of going through. I want you to go through the Xcode and play around, see what the different options that you have up here for debugging. If you wanted to debug something, say let's go into the view controller, and you see that right here. If you do this, it sets something called a blank or a breakpoint. So if you want your code to stop there, it'll stop there. So if you have something reading, if you want to right click on it and do disable, you could disable it. You could even do delete breakpoint and it deletes it. So remember, if you want your code to stop somewhere and you want to test something, see what it's producing, you could do that. You have source code control up here. We're not going to use these controls for our source code. We're going to use the way that I'm showing you. Let's see here. It's actually a lot quicker that way. And the rest of it is pretty. If you do about Xcode, it will tell you what version you're running and so forth. So if I want to close my project, I'll just do close project. And that's it. So this is the complete lecture of this week. Like I said, this week is going to be discussing about iOS, just kind of building, just getting started. We're not going to really get into anything deep this week. Next week, we'll start getting into different things that we're going to learn, our assignments. We'll start eventually, like week 2, week 3, we'll start working on a project. This project will be an individual project that we'll work on, and I'll start it off, and then we'll just build something each week and go from there. And it'll be on up to you to build that aspect of it. So this is a week 1 lecture. If you have any questions to it, please let me know. All right, well, thanks a lot. Have a great day, and thanks for watching and listening.